Hi, this is Loyal to All once again, and this time this video is, as you guessed it, going to be another stick fighting video or Filipino martial arts video. And what I'm actually going to show you right now is the power aspect of the MMA. For a lot of people, when they think about Filipino martial arts, they always think about fast, quick, and efficient and effective strikes. Especially when you're actually doing the level 6 or just doing any kind of stick motion in general. See? Fast, quick. However, not a lot of people think about power strikes when it comes to Filipino martial arts. And let me explain. The reason being is too much emphasis is being placed on hitting your opponent or your assailant as quick and as fast as possible so that you can actually do a lot of combos on them to actually stop their attacks, basically being overly aggressive. But the problem is you become too quick and too fast in your striking and in doing your combinations that what ends up happening is you're kind of leaning towards being too fast and too quick and diminishing a lot of power in that. And so when opportunity presents itself, you don't actually grab that opportunity to do a power strike to finish your opponent or assailant off and then just leave the situation, hopefully. But you end up actually just doing a lot more instead of actually finishing it as quick as possible. So there's that. And in doing so, a lot of people just practice and practice doing the fast stuff and the quick stuff because not only is it cool in doing those, but it also makes them feel confident. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but too much of doing the quick stuff will actually leave you into overlooking other areas that actually might help you. So in this case, the power strikes. Now, as we know, most of you know actually already know the heaven sticks, the basic Sinawali like this, or any other kind of drill. This one, the umbrella or the roof block, then the umbrella. As you know, the abanico, any kind of side twirling and all that stuff. But the power strikes come from you doing exactly the basics, not the complicated stuff. Sure, you can actually do like that, but when it comes to power strikes, you have to actually break it down to doing the basics. So what I mean by basics is, let's say right hand with your right stick, for example. So if you're a left-hander, just reverse the situation where I'm showing here in this video. Right hand, right stick. Just place it here on top. So if you can do it with a normal stance, that's fine, but I would prefer that you would actually be on a fighting stance or in an athletic stance. Athletic stance mostly is where your feet are split, or like this, usually a little bit more than shoulder width, if not shoulder width. Making it springy, your knees are not locked, they're a bit bent, so that you'll have that springy effect, like so. And the first thing that you're going to do is to do the first portion of the 1-2. See? So for any of you that needs reviewing, this is the 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Now for this portion, we're just going to do the 1. And for us to do the power strike for the 1 is not to actually basically do it as if we're holding a baseball bat and strike it like that, or holding an axe and strike it like that. Although the mechanics of holding the axe and actually hitting with the axe is also a good thing, but in this case we're just using a stick for practice. So the power strike that we want to practice is this. See? Hear the sound of the stick. See? Notice that when I do the power strike, I'm not just using the arm. The arm is just the result of the power that my torque is doing. So that's the reason why you are in an athletic stance instead of the normal standing. Because in the normal standing, when you do so, your torque is going to be so great that your body will most likely follow to the direction that your torque will lead you to. Whereas when you're in an athletic stance, your legs, in this matter, will be able to absorb some of the torque of it so that you can actually spring to doing a second strike, which is also a power strike. But in this case, we're just going to do the first portion. Again, athletic stance, your stick here on top of your shoulder or your traps, like so, and then just torque your upper torso or your hips to the opposite side. So if I'm a right-hander, I'm going to twist my torso to the left, and then my hand with the stick will follow, like so. So if you haven't practiced doing the power strikes yet, practice it with just the motion. And just let the power of your torque flow to your hand. So if I do it side view here. So if I remove the stick and I just let my torque of my torso do the work, you'll see that my hand will follow. So if I relax my hand like this, and it doesn't matter if you raise your hand here, kind of like trying to imagine that you're holding a stick, it's the same. So when you now choose to hold the stick, it's going to be like this. Your hand will just extend and will follow the end result or the end place of where your torque goes. So in this case, my left. Notice that my hand doesn't stop in front of me. It stops here at this portion. And this is an exaggeration because you're actually going to practice this, but eventually when you're actually going to incorporate the power, if you haven't watched my hip rotation videos yet, that's one of the prerequisites. So watch those and you'll be able to understand how to actually apply the hip rotation and the torque of your upper torso in order to do power moves such as this one. But basically, what you want to do is just do this. See? Power is from the hip. Twisting your hip to the other side will result with the torque of your upper torso, and your hand or your arm will follow along with the stick. So after doing this motion, you want to make it a little bit tighter and smaller. So instead of just doing a hip rotation in place like this, in a split stance or athletic stance, you'll be able to do that. See? For those of you who are boxers, you'll be able to actually understand this because this is actually one of the basic mechanics that you're using when you're actually throwing a right hook, if you're a right-hander, or even a left hook. Like so. Now with the stick, and you compact all of these moves together, once you are very proficient with the practice of this, it's going to look like this. my hips go first, my upper body follows, and then I just let my arm flow, having a firm grip. Not a death grip where you're actually trying to crush the stick. No. Firm enough that you're not going to actually let the stick fly. Okay? Because if you're actually going to have your loose grip and you have a powerful torque with your hips and your upper body and your arm follows, chances are your stick will just fly. So just have a firm grip. This will be the end result. Like so. Of course, your non-stick hand should be placed tapping your bicep here so that your stick can safely be planted or parked on your left tricep if you're a right-hander. Right tricep if you're a left-hander. See? I'm not consciously tapping my left hand to my bicep. The tap is just a result of my left hand stopping my right arm and trying to overreach. So instead of actually having me doing the normal practice of, see the overreach there? Because I'm making it more compact and making the motions more compact and smaller, it leads to actually me doing the movements faster in one small motion or in one very quick motion. Chances are I'm going to overextend so much that I'm overstretching my back shoulder or the back of my shoulder. So that's where my non-stick hand helps. See? See, that's one motion, and that's only just strike one. So if an opportunity presents itself, say a combo, like so, and then the opportunity is there, and there's the stopping strike that you need in order to stop the fight against your assailant, your opponent. There you go, that's a KO power, or that's the KO move, and then they just walk away. Same thing with the two. So this is one, and then two. Two would be actually the same, except that you're just trying to open. Like so. So again, for boxers who are very familiar with this move, it's just throwing a left hook. But instead of throwing a left hook, you're actually trying to do a backhand. See, the motion of the left hook is the same, but the hand that you're using will be the right, and you're just doing a backhand. Like so. Show it on the side view here. See? After you use with the backhand, you can make a fist, so it's going to be a back fist. Again, hips first, then the upper body follows because of the torque. And if it helps, your left foot, or your lead foot in this case, will also try to torque following the hips and your upper torso in the motion of putting out the cigarette, making you planted and balanced in doing this motion, while your right foot or your back leg is planted for balance and so that you're not going to tip over as you do this move. Now that you practice that, with the stick, again, firm grip, not death grip, stick on top of the shoulder, or here at the side of the tricep. After you do this, like so. See? Notice the sound of the stick when I do power strikes. See, that's the kind of sound that you would want to produce when you're doing power strikes with the stick. Of course, this is just for the stick. If you're going to use for example, a bladed weapon, like a machete, for example, or a parang, or a sword, or a small sword, the mechanics would actually be quite different since they're made of metal, and as we all know, metal is heavier than wood, but the mechanics would be quite similar. You're just going to do a little bit of tweaking with, say, your footwork, or how you're going to torque yourself, or when are you going to torque your hips and your upper torso, when both of these are going to be synced together and stuff like that. But for now, stick is going to be what you would want as the result. Now, aside from doing power strikes, you can now also do this using feints. So say, for example, my opponent knows that after I do a combo, power strike is right here. And my opponent knows that it's going to be a power strike. So instead of him actually blocking my strike, which was a result of him actually having his weapon taken out because of the force that he's receiving, because he's at the receiving end of it, or he knows that he's going to be hit, he's just going to step back. You can feint, then do a power strike, like so. So the torque of the hip and the upper torso is not just for power, but it's also for visual show, to let them know that you can use it as a feint also. See? Like so. So there you have it. Again, power strikes are not to be taken lightly, pun intended, but a lot of martial artists out there, especially Filipino martial artists, or those who are actually practicing FMA or weapon arts, should not take power strikes lightly, because without the power strikes, you may not be able to end the fight well, or not fast enough. I know how ironic that sounds, but with the power strikes, you're actually going to be able to end the fight quickly. That's not to say that you would just focus on doing power strikes, like you actually just use haymakers every single time just to knock your opponent out. No. Fast strikes are good. Quick combos are great. But if you're not going to apply power to them, especially if you don't have a finishing move inside your combinations, especially with the fast strikes, you're not going to be able to finish the fight quickly. It's just like boxing. If both of your hands are jabs, you're not going to be able to knock your opponent out. So jab, jab. So in boxing, that's the reason why you have a light strike, which is a jab, and then your straight, which is going to be a power move that uses the torque of your hip together with your upper torso to knock your opponent out. That's the reason why there's a famous saying that goes, your jab is where you send your opponent to a hospital. Your cross is what you're going to put your opponent to the grave. As bad as that quote sounds, when it comes to training, it makes sense, because you don't want to just hit your opponent and then they just stand there. You want to knock your opponent down so that they won't be able to get up and fight back at you. So it's the same concept with the power strikes with weapons, especially blunt weapons such as a stick. So there you have it. Hopefully this has enlightened you and have changed your mind when it comes to doing power strikes, to actually remind you not to neglect it, that they're power strikes for a reason. They're there. So if you haven't trained with them for a while, dust off your training schedule, bring back those power strikes, and if you have trained too much on doing fast stuff, the fast combinations, maybe it's time to actually bring back the power strikes, even if you're just doing the basics. Sure, you're open every time you're doing a power strike, like what I'm doing right now. But in the end, if you're actually going to incorporate it with some of the quick ones, the power strike will actually be a very good tool, a very good ender for finishing a fight. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this video has helped you even in the smallest way possible. God bless you all. Always train safe and take care.